Hey everybody, it's Jordan Rosenberg here from Beermann Law, and I am joined today here with Monica Kathuria and Jill Bajorek of Encircle Psychological Services in Chicago. These two are therapists and psychologists at one of my favorite counseling locations in Chicago, and very excited to have them here today to talk a little bit about divorce and sort of counseling and divorce, the benefits of counseling, and especially during this kind of odd time during COVID. So I guess as part of divorce, and why I have Jill and Monica here today, is because we often refer our clients to counselors during a divorce. Obviously, it's a traumatic time. We believe that counseling provides that outlet to communicate with somebody and sort of deal with the emotional aspect of a divorce. And for us, it's great as divorce lawyers because it allows our clients to sort of parcel out that emotional aspect versus the business aspect. And I think that when people have counselors that are our clients, we're able to communicate more effectively with them and strategize more effectively with them because they have that outlet. And so because of that, I often refer people to counselors, and it's very helpful. And so first kind of concept that I want to talk to you guys about is in divorce, the divorce in general is sort of this concept of taboo. And nobody wants to think about it. Nobody wants to talk about it. Nobody obviously wants to be involved with it if you can avoid it. And I feel like I get that same impression for counseling. And I think when I suggest counseling to a lot of my clients, they sometimes almost like feel offended that I'm referring them to counseling and that something's, quote unquote, wrong with them. And so my question for you guys is, do you kind of get that sense of taboo as a counselor? And what type of people and in what circumstances do you believe that therapy or counseling is appropriate?
Yeah, I think it's become less and less taboo over time. I certainly see a difference when people talk about maybe how their parents feel about it, how their some older relatives, and you could see that there's a difference with the younger generation right now, but overall there is still that taboo. And I think it's hard to overcome. It's as you said, it almost signifies that something's wrong with you. And really the way that I see it, and I think we see it really, is that it's not like there has to be a problem. It's a space to talk about yourself, to learn more about yourself, to connect with somebody else. I mean, the space itself is dedicated to the client. When the client's in the room, that's their time. We don't disclose about us. It's not about us talking about ourselves like a friendship dynamic would be. There's really that focus on them and to kind of explore whatever they want. And sometimes it's very deep and, I guess talking about an issue or a problem, but sometimes it's more lighthearted, and just kind of having that hour for themselves is so useful.
Yeah, I mean,
yeah, go ahead, Monica.
Yeah, I absolutely agree with what Jill is saying. I mean, I think a lot of people are nervous. You think something is wrong with them, when really it is just a place to sort of have an unbiased opinion and be able to bounce things off of other people. And, so we don't always see our own faults or our own way of doing things. And so it's nice to have somebody to be able to point some of those things out and talk us through it and not judge us for the things that we do or don't do. So I think we want to get rid of that stigma that it's a taboo sort of thing. It's about you. And a lot of times people are like, well, it's just selfish, I don't want to sit there and talk about me, but this is really more about self-care,
right,
to connect with things that resonate with you and be able to work some of those things out. I think it's obviously very helpful and beneficial.
Right. Well, especially in divorce. I mean, would you guys obviously consider a divorce a trauma?
I think trauma is a tricky word. It's really the way that something is perceived, the way that someone takes something in. So what's trauma to one person might not be to somebody else. But we can say that because divorce is a big life adjustment, that it's something. It's going to have some effect on somebody, and certainly can very much be a trauma for people.
Fair enough. I mean, during your practice, do you see more benefits to people having counseling during these change in life events, or do you find as much success just with individuals individually where they're maybe doing it and they're just saying, hey, I'm really stressed out, I just want somebody to talk about? I mean, is there a difference in benefits to you guys in those two scenarios?
I mean, I think, yeah, when there are certain, big life changes, it really does affect us, even though, we think that we might be able to handle it, or, we know that it's coming, we anticipate it's coming. I mean, I think we've all been through a move, and, we all know it's super stressful, but then when you're going through it, you start to live it. And then I think when those emotions come up, maybe sometimes you're shocked by it and you don't realize, like, oh, this is really affecting me more than I had anticipated. So even if you know it's coming, you don't always know how you're going to respond to it. So, divorce or something like that is a huge life event that I think a lot of people benefit from having a little support around it.
Mm-hmm. Well, and
Right.
to back on that really quick, there's also, as you said, if it's just, oh, I'm anxious or I have anxiety and I just kind of want to open it, sometimes we end up revealing the thing that's actually going on. Maybe it is, I moved a bit ago, or this thing actually happened in my life and I thought I was fine, but I'm having anxiety now. And so sometimes even the things that don't seem significant end up being about something significant.
Right. Right. And especially in the context of a divorce. I mean, again, I just think you guys are so valuable because there's so many issues in a divorce, and it's financial issues. And that's a change, that a lot of people are experiencing. It's, you're losing your spouse, you're being separated from your kids. I mean, you're not seeing it. There are so many traumatic life events. And in some cases, again, Jill, I won't use trauma too colloquially, but I'll
That's
just
okay.
say it's definitely a change for everybody in a lot of different ways. And the benefits of counseling, just to have your own space and talk to you guys and work through those, is just so beneficial, to me as a divorce lawyer. But go ahead, Monica.
The thing about change that I don't think people always recognize is that it's uncomfortable. It's unfamiliar. We like what's familiar. Even if that thing is not working for us, we know it and it's familiar to us. So when change happens, people get really uncomfortable because it's so unfamiliar to them. And so a lot of times I talk with people about sitting with that discomfort until it becomes comfortable. And then that change has occurred in the way that you want it to happen.
So I think a lot of people are like, a lot of listeners who haven't gone to counseling or therapy before, I think have a hesitation in actually picking up the phone, like we were talking before, and actually contacting a therapist and making that first step and saying, okay, we're going to set up a meeting. I'm going to move forward with this. And that's very similar to actually picking up the phone and calling a divorce lawyer. It's sort of like, okay, I'm taking the step. I understand the taboo. It's good, bad, or otherwise. I'm moving forward. Will you guys kind of explain to me sort of the process and like what type of format does counseling take? What do you guys offer? What are the options? Like, give me a little bit of like how you start and what that looks like.
I do sometimes think that the first step is the hardest step, just because it has that sort of feeling of being the first step. As you said, it kind of makes it maybe more real. Like, it's one thing to think about divorce. It's one thing to think about therapy, but then you actually make the phone call and start looking at times, and it becomes a lot more real to actually fit into our lives. So it's huge. And I think because of that, sometimes the initial piece is very difficult, but I've found that after taking that leap, after realizing that I'm just a person, we are in an office together, we're just talking. And I certainly try to not super structure it, especially at first. I don't need to start getting into like, what's your hardest issue? Just because I'd rather be in that comfortable zone with the client so they can kind of lead me. Where do you want to go today? What do you want to talk about? So it's really their space. And I think once the transition happens from this is terrifying, what is this going to be like, to, oh, this is my space, that's where that comfort seems to come in.
Once people call us, we kind of figure out what it is that they want to kind of come in and talk about. And then when they come in for that first session, it's really about, what do you think you're struggling with? What are some of your goals? And explaining to them, it is a process and it is more like a conversation. I think Jill and I practice the same in that sense, that it's not like super structured. Sometimes people ask for that, and if that is what works for them, we're happy to do it more structured. But we'd like to be able to, want people to feel like we're having a conversation with them and that it's more relaxed. The office, I'm hoping they're comfortable sitting on a couch and just sort of having that conversation. And then we kind of continue to sort of nudge them until they get to a place where they can start to make some of those changes.
So counseling is 100% confidential, and even if, you know, Monica, you and I were friends, and I was your client, you couldn't go out and tell Jill at the bar, you know, things that we talked about during our session.
I can't even say that you were my client.
Right.
Got it. Got it. During couples counseling, do you have a confidentiality with both of them?
So when we work with couples, the role is to be there for the relationship and helping the couple with the relationship. I don't encourage secrets, you know, meaning, you know, if the husband comes and says, you know, actually I've been cheating on my wife this whole time, you know, it's sort of like, I will encourage him to say, well, we got to talk about that in therapy. It's, you know, I'm not going to, I can't, it's not beneficial for me to keep their secrets. So whatever's happening, I'm there for the relationship. Yeah, one of the specialties at Encircle is relationships and communications. And with couples specifically, what happens is, you know, especially when they're fighting or they're going through a divorce, you know, they're fighting for airtime. And so they're not hearing what the other person is saying because they're so busy trying to get their point across. And so what happens is you're missing what the other person is saying. So what we like to do is work on that communication piece. So we help in saying these things a little bit more effectively and changing the way we're talking. We're still saying the exact same thing, but we're teaching them how to say it in a way that the other person can hear them. And so I think this is huge for people who are fighting or going through the divorce process, because it makes the communication a little bit more effective, and it's not going to be as stressful when you can hear what the other person is trying to say to you and what you're trying to say to them and feel like you're being heard.
Even if, I mean, have you guys had couples where they're in a divorce and you still offer that couples counseling even during this time of conflict in the divorce?
I don't know for Jill, I don't know, you probably see them individually, but for couples, I usually, unfortunately, when people come to me, they're sort of like, this is the last ditch effort.
Yeah.
We'd like to see people come in a little bit sooner than that, but
Yeah.
you know, even when they come to this last chance, you know, we can still work with them. So we get different phases, but we do get people who also are in the middle of a divorce, and we can still work on how to communicate better with that person. I have a gentleman right now who's in the middle of a separation, and he's noticed that his communication with his soon-to-be ex-wife has gotten better because we've been working together.
Yeah, sometimes it's working out of something. And that goes back to therapy being really about lots of different things, whatever works for the individual, for the couple. But coming sooner, obviously a fantastic idea, because again, it shouldn't necessarily be just, I have a problem, so that's why I'm going to therapy. Maybe it's just, we have a great relationship, but man, we can't communicate very well, or I'm saying something and they're hearing something totally differently. Like you're saying, Monica, just that connecting piece almost. So we encourage it really at any stage. And as you're saying too, during the divorce process, just to communicate, get your point across a little bit better, and meet in the middle somewhere, so that there's at least some peace to the whole situation.
Yeah, and I mean, our office, I mean, we offer sort of, it's an interesting process. It's called the collaborative process, and it's a different perspective as it relates to divorce. And in that process, a lot of times we actually utilize a mental health professional to sort of like bring down the mood and like, you know, refocus everybody to that, you know, really fundamental communication, where some of the emotion is when we try to take out some of the emotion in that respect.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Actually, could you tell us a bit more about your work, maybe what our clients, if they're looking and maybe just want to get some ideas about a consultation, maybe what you could offer?
People. And so I think that there's a lot of unknowns, obviously, about divorce. And again, like we were talking about, it's sort of taboo. And I don't think a lot of people know their options. I don't think a lot of people know their rights. And my guess is that a lot of people that just heard me talk about this collaborative process didn't know that that was even an option. Mm-hmm. And so I am always happy to talk to anybody as a resource or as their actual attorney. I'm happy I do free consultations up to about an hour. And if it went an hour and 10 minutes, doesn't matter. Again, just trying to help everybody and make sure everybody understands what their options are, that they feel comfortable. And again, you know, I mean, if there's people that you guys work with that are just, you know, again, like I think you were saying, Monica, is like I think you said it, Jill, they're working their way out. And I think a lot of people, it helps. Planning is very important, and to sort of put a face to a name, hear the process, see the next steps, and kind of like lift the clouds from the unknown, I think is tremendously helpful for people in terms of taking that next step to benefit themselves.
That's great to know.
Something that everybody's talking about is this COVID virus. And especially now, I mean, you know, so much of our clients are alone and are dealing with with issues. I mean, financial issues, parenting issues, people are losing their jobs. I mean, they're getting furloughed. And, you know, like I said in other podcasts, there's all these issues with parenting. And does exchanging a child on a certain day, is that socially distancing? Who can that child be around? You know, we had spring break that passed. What are we doing for spring break? So there's all these just crazy new issues that are emerging. And so with COVID, do you guys believe that it's important during this time to have a counselor or a therapist, especially?
Yeah, I think this is one of those adjustments. This is a big life change for everyone in different ways. Everyone has their unique situation, but this is undeniably an adjustment in life, and having someone through it to sort of talk about it with, to just open up about the change, I think is useful. And you know, Monica, I know you even work with younger clients sometimes, and I wonder, you probably have some ideas about that. But yeah, it's especially a good time to talk about things.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we all were thrown into this major life transition at the same time, and none of us were prepared. And so even as therapists, you know, we're holding a lot of people's anxieties and sadness and things like that. And then we're also, it's just interesting, we're dealing with the exact same things they are. Mm-hmm. in a lot of ways, and sort of in terms of the social distancing and the working and trying to balance all of it. So it's interesting that we are experiencing the same thing in real time, but it is a huge adjustment for all of us.
Right,
So,
and I think that's the key. It's for everybody, right? And it's not this sort of taboo that there's something wrong with me. It's like everyone is having this fear. Everyone has it on the news 24/7. So I think to have sort of an outlet with you guys, I think would be tremendously beneficial for a lot of people. Mm-hmm. And so in divorce world and with the courts, things obviously are moving to a more electronic format. And we have now hearings and pretrials and mediations and conferences with our clients, all via Zoom, kind of like what we're doing right now. And it's just a total transition. And again, I think a lot of sort of the personal aspect obviously is lost. And I think that, you know, I'm sitting here in my office talking to you guys and you're not right in front of me. And so you kind of lose that connection. And so I know, obviously, I mean, how has the process changed for you guys, just logistically in terms of COVID? And my assumption would be that you're doing telehealth. Mm-hmm. And do you guys find that to be effective?
Yeah, it's a lot better than I thought, I'll say. And similar to, I think, starting therapy for the first time and maybe having the jitters or some sort of, I don't know, caution going into it for the first time. I think there was a little bit of that, like, as you said, I'm in my home and you're in your home and we're talking. And I think the issues right now are pretty powerful. As you said, we're all going through this. And I think once those topics start coming up, everything else just kind of falls into place. I think it becomes more about the dialogue even more. And then it just becomes the new routine that this is my chair that I go to for therapy. This is my time, that there still is that special aspect of it.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's become more comfortable. It's not anything I think any of us were really excited to do when it started.
Right.
A lot of glitches, but I think now it just feels like, I think the first couple of weeks were a little strange, but now people are just back to business as usual, talking about some stuff, so working on some of the stuff they had been prior to COVID. So it's nice to, I know you're saying we lose that connection, but I mean, we are so fortunate to have technology and this connection. I'm sitting here thinking, my God, what if this happened in the 80s or 90s, or,
Yeah.
there, a lot of this would be lost. And technology has been amazing in being able to continue to do the work we're doing, because it is so important right now with all the changes and the anxieties and the fears that are coming up with people.
Mm-hmm.
We can provide the service for them.
Yeah, I mean, even just to maintain sort of that continuity and kind of picking up where you left off. And it's just, I mean, because that's super important in therapy and counseling also, right?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Is there, and just kind of touching on that, is there a recommended frequency for how often you should at least touch bases with your therapist?
Initially, I would say weekly, because otherwise, if you're doing every other week, you're sort of catching up and you don't really know each other. So I think weekly, at least in the beginning. And then after that, you decide with your therapist, how you're doing.
Right.
Weekly is recommended. Most people like that. They really like to be able to come in and have that place to sort of talk about things. And so, some people are bi-weekly as well. So it depends. I think you need to talk with your therapist about what works for you.
Yeah. Well, and on that weekly piece too, especially thinking of the effects of COVID and how we all have to modify everything, that a lot of what we're hearing is that I don't have a routine anymore. I don't have the wake up, get ready, get on the train, go to work. There's maybe some routine for people who still work, certainly much less if you're not working. So that routine has always been beneficial in the therapeutic sense of like you said, weekly or so. Weekly is the recommended time, but more than ever right now to have this, I have the person I go to every week at this time, during a time when we don't have as much routine.
Right. And I'm sure people are excited just to kind of get away from their family for a few minutes and kind of have a safe space to kind of have some candid conversation with people.
And
yeah.
Actually, we realize that can be tricky too, is even finding that space. And so I think a lot of people are being really creative. Some are going into their cars and just sort of being like, this is my quiet, there's somebody I see who sits in her car because she's like, this is my quiet space. She has a room she could use, but this is what she's decided to do because this is most comfortable for her.
You got to be creative during this time. That's for sure.
Yeah.
So I think that actually sort of brings up a very real issue that there's a lot of that what's going on right now, and unfortunately it's gone up during this COVID virus. But I think a lot of people may struggle to find that safe space to actually get out from their house and talk to their therapist. And in our community, it's kind of funny. Like as divorce lawyers, we kind of say, everyone always asks me, hey, what's the divorce, world look like? And I say, well, imagine being quarantined with your soon to be ex-spouse and your kids running around and this and that. I mean, it's just chaotic, right?
Yeah.
But that is a really real and problematic issue that's occurring. And unfortunately, I think domestic violence has gone up tremendously.
Yeah.
And I mean, courts are still open as it relates to orders of protection and domestic violence court. And we're able to kind of service those people. And obviously, if there's issues, you immediately call, 911, or if there's an issue that you need to report, you report it. But, I guess from a mental health perspective, I mean, why do you think this is occurring other than the obvious? And have either of you kind of encountered this scenario? How can you guys help? And what should people do, when they find themselves in this situation?
Yeah, I mean, look, some people are feeling trapped. They're feeling that they are trapped in these situations, and domestic violence does go on the rise when people are home together. You'll see it over the holidays. You'll see it on vacations. These things tend to go up. It's gone up quite a bit. I think I saw a statistic, and don't quote me on it, but I think it was like close to 40% or something. It was a pretty high percentage of domestic violence that was happening because people are in these situations. They can't leave, because if they did leave, they wouldn't have anywhere to go. The other concern is that some places are not even getting as many calls to the domestic violence shelters because or hotlines because people are afraid and they don't have a space to do that. But I know that I was reading recently that Governor Pritzker and Mayor Lightfoot have been working with Airbnb, and I think it's, what's it called? Hotel Tonight, around providing, what did they say? It's providing a place to flee violent situations. So they're working with the Illinois domestic violence hotlines to help people with that. And like you said, thank God that the courts are available for orders of protection and things like that.
Yeah, it is something we're hearing about, and it is refreshing also that, as you said, that people are doing something about it. They're listening to the rise, the numbers. On a personal level, if we hear about it, it is something to process, to decide what is the danger, who's at risk, how to work through it, how to empower people if they feel they're at risk. Certainly if there's immediate danger, we always recommend, of course, to call 911, to actually reach out to emergency services if needed. But it's very difficult, and it looks different for everyone. Violence comes in many forms. So that's, it's a really good opportunity to utilize therapy to process, hey, this is happening, I'm not sure if this is right, to just talk about it and kind of have that space to do so.
I mean, and along the lines of calling 911, they're also the hotline. I don't want to mess up the number, but I think it's 800-799-SAFE 7233. So people can call that line, and then there's the hotline.org/help, which is another resource. And that hotline, I was reading that they speak like over 200 languages. So
that's great.
It's nice to know that those resources are there, and that you know, again, our governor and our mayor are helping to provide some safe spaces.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And if somebody was experiencing domestic violence and wanted to talk to somebody, you guys are certainly available to handle that?
Yeah. I don't think Jill and I don't necessarily specialize in domestic violence and trauma, but we do have therapists in the practice that do work with trauma. But we can certainly get that process started, and happy to talk to people and provide resources to make sure that they know that that's out there and that we want to be able to help them.
There is support out there. Yeah.
Good. So a lot sort of packed into this little webcast, and I'm sure we can go on and on and on. And I think, unfortunately, the whole concept of abuse sort of requires its own little webcast. But
sure,
notwithstanding, lots of synergy in between a divorce arena and the counseling arena. Again, I think it's a tremendous resource for our clients who are experiencing a divorce to help sort of handle the emotional aspect. And a lot of the times, you know, I tell our clients I'm sort of like an armchair therapist, you know, and so I don't have the training or capacity like you guys. And so that's why it's extremely helpful. And so always try to reach out and make sure you have that space. But otherwise, you guys are the greatest. And thank you so much for standing here or being here today and kind of talking to everybody about counseling, what it looks like, especially during these COVID times, and issues of domestic abuse. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.